Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you've been following the AI space, you already know it's moving at absolute light speed. But there is a hidden layer that most people are just completely missing. Today, we're unpacking the invisible infrastructure powering this massive boom. We're going to go way beyond the hype to see where the data tells us the real bottleneck actually lies. So, what is the silent engine driving this AI bull market? Well, while most of the headlines out there are absolutely obsessing over a handful of high-profile AI chip companies, the Nvidias of the world, our source analysis reveals a totally different silent engine driving the whole thing. We're looking past the mainstream chatter today to find out what actually makes this technology functionally possible. Here's the roadmap for our explainer today. We'll be covering 1. The silent AI engine, 2. Brain versus oxygen, 3. Memory versus storage, 4. The smart money system, and finally, 5. An irreversible shift. All right, let's jump right into part 1, the silent AI engine. Here's the deal. The smart money, those massive institutional strategies, they're quietly moving away from those super crowded chip trades. Instead, they are zeroing in on the short-term memory that actually makes those processors work in the first place. They're looking for the choke point. And the data tells us that choke point is the AI memory stack. This is, without a doubt, the most strategic asset in the game right now. Moving on to section 2, brain versus oxygen. Think about it like this. Having the fastest chip in the world, but with no memory, is literally like having a genius with a 5-second memory span. The compute, the chip itself, is the brain, right? It does the thinking. But the memory? That is the oxygen keeping the entire system alive. Most people just see AI as pure intelligence, but fundamentally, it's about access to data. If the brain can't remember what it learned just 5 seconds ago, performance completely collapses. To really understand this oxygen, we need to talk about high bandwidth memory, or HBM. See, AI doesn't just do one math equation and stop. It is constantly pulling massive data sets, storing context, and retraining itself in real time. That requires an ultra-low latency, massive data highway. And that is exactly what HBM provides. Because of that crazy workload, the demand for memory is totally nonlinear. As the source points out, one AI server doesn't just need one memory unit to go with it. It actually needs multiples of memory capacity just to keep up with one single chip. This severe capacity constraint is sending demand for providers absolutely parabolic, simply because there's no workaround. There are no shortcuts here. That brings us to section 3, memory versus storage. Our source draws a super sharp distinction here, and you really need to catch this. Short-term memory, stuff like DRAM and HBM from players like Micron and Samsung, that lets the AI think fast. It's the active workspace. On the flip side, companies like Western Digital and Seagate act as long-term storage. That's the vault where massive datasets live at scale for the long haul. Both are absolutely vital, but they serve completely different functions in the tech stack. Now, for those of you tracking the broader sector, instead of trying to cherry-pick individual winners, the source points out a pretty fascinating vehicle, a DRAM ETF. It basically captures this entire memory ecosystem in one single move, letting you gain exposure to the bottleneck without betting the house on just one company's execution. All right, let's look at section 4, the smart money system. The source outlines a very strict, disciplined system, so you aren't just blindly trading on hype. It all kicks off with a simple metric, 10%. When a position drops by 10%, it acts as your initial caution light. It's a signal to wake up and reevaluate exactly what the market is telling you. But if a trade keeps going against this system and drops by 20 to 25%, boom, that triggers a hard stop. At this point, you completely remove ego from the equation. There's no hoping for a bounce here. You are simply out. And the ultimate goal of that hard stop? It's survival. By cutting the loss at 25%, you make sure you retain at least 75% of your capital to fight another day. Instead of riding a hype wave straight into the ground, you preserve your foundation so you can redeploy capital when the next real opportunity pops up. So, when you're filtering for market leaders, the source points to 3 strict criteria for winning assets. First up, performance focus. You want assets that are doubling the S&P 500. Second, institutional volume. Heavy accumulation tells you the smart money is loading the boat. And third, the asset type. It has to be a strategic necessity, like high bandwidth memory and not just some easily replaceable commodity. Let's wrap things up with section 5, an irreversible shift. Here's the big picture. We aren't just talking about a software update anymore. The world is fundamentally shifting into a massive physical infrastructure and power generation play. While you can always pause software spending if the economy gets a little tight, physical infrastructure buildouts of this scale, you can't just hit pause on those. At the center of it all, memory is the indispensable fuel keeping this irreversible revolution running. Without it, the whole thing just grinds to a halt. As we finish up this explainer, we want to leave you with a direct challenge, straight from the source material, about where your focus is right now. Are you looking where the puck is going, with memory and infrastructure, or are you still caught up watching the chips like everyone else? Think about it. We'll see you in the next one.